I've learned a lot in this lie, on stage, on set, and most importantly, when the lights are off and I'm alone with my own thoughts. We talk so much about love, about ambition, about strength. But rarely do we talk about respect, especially in the context of relationships. Respect is the backbone of every connection we value, and too many of us are bending our spines trying to earn it from people who never learned how to give it. Today, I want to talk to every woman, every human being who has ever sat on the edge of their bed late at night, asking themselves, why doesn't he respect me? Well, I have an answer: he'll never respect you until you stop this. Stop shrinking. Stop apologizing for taking up space. Stop making yourself small to keep someone else comfortable. You weren't born to be agreeable. You were born to be brilliant. When you water yourself down, you're teaching people that your dreams are negotiable, that your voice can be turned down like background music. Don't quiet your magic. Don't minimize your power. Don't label your standards as too much. He will never respect you until you respect yourself enough to stop compromising your identity. Stop begging. Let's be real. Respect can't be earned by pleasing. It's not a reward for keeping your mouth shut. It's not something you chase. It's not earned by accepting the bare minimum and pretending it's love. You teach people how to treat you. Every time you let a boundary slide, every time you give another pass to a disrespectful comment, a broken promise, a lack of effort, you're writing your own instruction manual. This is what I will tolerate. And let me tell you something I've learned across cultures, continents, and red carpets. Dignity is universal. The moment you stop begging for love, you start commanding respect, because love that has to be begged for isn't love. It's a transaction, and you, my darling, are not for sale. Stop waiting. Stop waiting for him to change. Stop waiting for him to suddenly realize your worth, to wake up one morning and say, wow, I've taken her for granted. Maybe he will. Maybe he won't, but your life is too precious to gamble on maybe. I've been there. I know what it's like to love someone so much that you're willing to wait for them to become the person they promised they'd be. But if you're always the one doing the waiting, you're not in a relationship. You're in a prison of potential. Break free. So let me say it one more time: he'll never respect you until you stop this. Stop sacrificing your light to keep someone else from feeling blind. Stop twisting yourself into shapes just to fit into someone else's comfort zone. Stop staying quiet to keep the peace when your soul is screaming for more. Respect isn't a luxury, it's a standard, and once you stop asking for it and start expecting it not just from him, but from yourself, you'll never have to fight for it again, because the right people don't get threatened by your power. They're inspired by it. So often, we find ourselves shrinking in the name of love, peace, or acceptance. It's not always obvious. Sometimes it starts with something as small as not voicing your opinion during a disagreement. Other times it's saying yes when your whole body is screaming no. Over time, these small compromises become habits, and before you know it, you've molded yourself into a version of you that exists only to keep someone else comfortable. This is what it means to shrink. To make yourself smaller so that someone else doesn't feel insecure, offended, or challenged. But here's the truth. If someone can only love you when you're playing small, that's not love. It's control disguised as connection. Real respect doesn't require you to hide your intelligence, your ambition, your voice, or your dreams. You were never meant to be the background to someone else's spotlight. You are the main character in your own life. And the moment you start editing your light to please someone else, you're stepping away from your own power. The problem is that we're conditioned, especially as women or people raised to be nice, to believe that being agreeable is the same as being lovable. We're taught to be softs, spoken, to avoid making waves, to not come across as too much. And in that process, we learn to equate self-sacrifice with virtue. But there's nothing virtuous about being a watered-down version of yourself. When you shrink, you don't just lose respect, you lose yourself. People can sense when you doubt your own worth, and unfortunately, when you act like your needs, thoughts, and voice aren't important, people will believe you. That's how cycles of disrespect begin, not because you're not worthy of respect, but because you've taught others not to give it. You teach people how to treat you by the way you treat yourself. So when you minimize your own presence, you're silently telling others that your light isn't worth protecting. Reclaiming your space isn't about being loud for the sake of noise, it's about standing in your truth. It's about knowing that your opinions matter, your presence is valuable, and your boundaries are not negotiable. You don't need to shout to be powerful. You just need to stop apologizing for existing. Because the moment you stop shrinking, something amazing happens. People either rise to meet your level or fall away, and either outcome is a win. Respect always starts from within. It's easy to look outward and wonder why someone else doesn't value you, but the deeper question is, how are you valuing yourself? Every time you let something slide that doesn't sit right with you, every time you silence your needs to keep someone happy, and every time you ignore your intuition in order to avoid conflict, you're sending a message. Not just to them, but to yourself. That message is, what I feel doesn't matter enough. And once you start believing that, others will too. Self-respect isn't about ego or entitlement. It's about knowing your worth so clearly that you don't need to convince anyone of it. It's about being rooted in your values, your boundaries, and your voice, even when that makes people uncomfortable. When you carry yourself with self-respect, it shows in your energy, your choices, your words, and even your silence. People notice it, not because you demand their attention, but because self-respect is magnetic. It commands presence without ever needing permission. There's a common trap people fall into, trying to earn respect by being everything for everyone. By being accommodating, pleasing, soft-spoken, or endlessly patient, and while kindness is a strength, it should never come at the cost of your self-worth. You don't need to prove your value through suffering. You prove your value by showing up for yourself, by protecting your time, your heart, and your peace. When you set boundaries, you're not pushing people away. You're filtering who's truly meant to be in your life. Because the ones who respect you will never require you to lower your standards to stay connected. It's also important to remember that people treat you the way you treat yourself. If you constantly tolerate disrespect from yourself through negative self-talk, burnout, or putting your own needs last, others will mirror that behavior. The way you speak about yourself, the way you prioritize your well-being, the way you enforce your limits, that's the foundation of the respect you receive. People follow your lead. So if you want others to respect you, start by respecting yourself in every room you walk into, even if you're the only one doing it at first. Walk like your worth isn't up for negotiation. Speak like your thoughts carry weight. Love yourself like you're the most important relationship you'll ever have, because you are. And when that respect radiates from within, the world has no choice but to respond in kind. There's something deeply painful about feeling like you have to beg for love or approval. It chips away at your dignity in quiet, subtle ways until one day you wake up wondering how you became so small in a relationship that was supposed to make you feel seen. When you find yourself constantly trying to prove your worth, hoping that if you just do a little more, stay a little quieter, love a little harder, then maybe, just maybe, they'll finally give you the respect you deserve. That's not love. That's survival. The problem is, many people confuse love with acceptance and acceptance with performance. You end up walking on eggshells, believing that if you're good enough, easy enough, forgiving enough, that will earn you the basic decency of being respected. But here's the truth. Love that is conditional on your silence or self-abandonment isn't real love, it's manipulation. Respect is never the result of how perfectly you can mold yourself to someone else's needs. It doesn't come from bending until you break. You were not put on this earth to convince someone to value you. The moment you start begging for effort, attention, commitment, or kindness, you've already stepped out of alignment with your worth. People who truly see you will never make you fight for your place in their lives. They'll never leave you wondering whether you matter, because to them, your presence is not a convenience, it's a gift. Begging strips away your power. It shifts the dynamic from mutual love to emotional scarcity. And when you operate from scarcity, you'll accept crumbs and call it a feast. You'll start believing that being tolerated is the same as being cherished. But you are not meant to be tolerated, you are meant to be celebrated. If someone makes you feel like you have to constantly earn their affection, that's not a reflection of your inadequacy. It's a reflection of their inability to love. The moment you stop begging is the moment you start reclaiming your power. You start realizing that walking away from people who can't meet your energy is an act of self-respect. You don't need to raise your voice or create a scene. You just stop showing up where you are unappreciated, and that's silence. The choice to no longer beg becomes the loudest statement of all. You are not hard to love. You've just been asking for it from people who don't know what love really means. Boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out. They're bridges that show others how to love and respect us in a way that's healthy, mutual, and sustainable. Yet too often, people struggle to set them because they fear rejection, conflict, or being seen as selfish. But the truth is, without boundaries, there can be no real respect. When you continuously let things slide, whether it's a disrespectful comment, a broken promise, or emotional neglect, you're not keeping the peace. You're creating silent chaos within yourself. Each time you ignore your gut feeling or stay silent to avoid uncomfortable conversations, you're teaching people that your comfort is less important than theirs. And over time, that becomes your standard. What you tolerate doesn't just define your relationships, it defines your entire experience of love and connection. People don't just randomly cross lines, they test limits. And when you fail to enforce those limits, they learn they can do it again. Respect requires consistency. It's not something you just talk about. It's something you reinforce through your actions. Setting boundaries isn't about being harsh or unkind. It's about being clear. It's saying, this is what I need to feel safe, valued, and whole. And the right people won't be offended by that. They'll appreciate it, because when you respect your own space, it gives others permission to do the same. But when you don't, you attract those who benefit from your lack of limits. That's how cycles of emotional exhaustion and one-sided effort begin. Sometimes we don't set boundaries because we're afraid people will leave. But if someone walks away because you asked to be treated with basic dignity, they were never truly there for you in the first place. You're not difficult because you have standards. You're not cold because you expect consistency. And you're not dramatic because you speak up when something hurts. You're simply choosing to live in alignment with your truth instead of someone else's comfort zone. When you start honoring your own limits, something shifts, not just in how others treat you, but in how you see yourself. You no longer feel the need to apologize for expecting respect. You stop second-guessing your intuition. You begin to live with a quiet kind of confidence that says, I know what I deserve and I will not settle for less. And that's when the right kind of people start showing up. Those who recognize your worth not because you demanded it, but because you lived it. Waiting for someone to change is one of the most exhausting, soul-draining things you can do. You hold on to hope, remembering the good moments, the promises, the potential they showed at the beginning. You tell yourself that if you just stay a little longer, love them a little harder, or give them one more chance, maybe they'll finally become the person they said they'd be. But potential is not a plan, and hope is not a strategy. Living in a constant state of waiting means you're choosing a fantasy over your reality, and that's a dangerous place to live. The truth is, people don't change because you love them. They change because they decide to. And if someone hasn't made that decision on their own, all your effort, patience, and sacrifice won't make a difference. It's hard to accept, especially when your heart is deeply invested. But holding space for someone's growth is very different from putting your own life on pause while you wait for them to catch up. The first is supportive. The second is self-abandonment. Waiting often disguises itself as loyalty, but real loyalty should never come at the cost of your own peace. You might think you're being strong by staying, but strength isn't about how much you can endure, it's about knowing when enough is enough. If you're constantly explaining the same issues, asking for the same effort, or hoping for a level of respect that still hasn't shown up, it's not a relationship anymore, it's a cycle. And while you're waiting for them to become who you need, you're delaying your own healing, your own growth, your own joy. You're putting your future on hold for someone who may never arrive. Time is your most valuable currency, and once it's spent, you don't get it back. Don't waste it on a maybe. The right person won't need endless chances to do the bare minimum. They'll show up ready and willing without being begged, reminded, or rescued. Choosing to stop waiting doesn't mean you're giving up on love. It means you're choosing yourself over potential. It means you're recognizing that your time, energy, and heart are worthy of someone who's already aligned with the respect and reciprocity you deserve. Walking away from someone who isn't changing isn't failure, it's freedom, and that freedom creates the space for real love, the kind that doesn't ask you to wait, but meets you where you already are. Respect should never be treated like a rare gift or an occasional reward. It is not something you should have to earn by being perfect, quiet, forgiving, or endlessly patient. Respect is a basic human necessity, not a luxury. The problem arises when we begin to lower our standards for the sake of connection, giving people passes for behavior we know deep down is unacceptable. We cling to the exceptions, those rare moments when someone shows up, says the right thing, or offers just enough affection to keep us hoping. But consistency is what reveals character, not occasional acts of kindness. When you hold people to your standard of respect, it becomes clear who belongs in your life and who only showed up to take advantage of your kindness. The moment you stop tolerating inconsistency is the moment people have to choose. Rise to meet you or step aside. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. When you make respect the standard, not the exception, you no longer feel grateful for the bare minimum. You no longer excuse disrespect because it's wrapped in a moment of charm. You stop romanticizing emotional scraps and start expecting emotional nourishment. It's important to understand that the people who truly value you will never ask you to settle. They won't push your boundaries or test your worth. They'll meet your standard without being asked because they see you clearly. They won't find your expectations overwhelming. They'll find them refreshing. But that clarity only comes when you stop explaining yourself and start living your worth out loud. You don't need to convince anyone to treat you well. That kind of energy is never sustainable. You simply walk in alignment with what you know you deserve and allow people to show you whether or not they can meet you there. The fear that being too much will scare people away is real, but the truth is, the right people aren't scared by standards, they're inspired by them. They're drawn to your strength, not threatened by it. And if someone walks away because you refuse to lower your expectations, consider that a blessing. That's not a loss, it's protection. You're not here to train someone how to treat you. You're here to live fully, boldly, and without apology. When respect becomes your non-negotiable, your relationships shift. You stop chasing, you stop explaining, and you start attracting people who already get it. And in that space, you find peace, not because someone gave it to you, but because you finally decided to give it to yourself. Thanks.